Welcome to the KIX EMAP podcast, a podcast where we interview important leaders in education from Europe, Middle East and North Africa, and the Asia and Pacific regions. I'm your host, Ryan Allen, assistant professor at Soka University of America here in Orange County, California. My own background is in international and comparative education. Let's start the show. Today, we have Albina Tsiatkovska, the Director General for International Cooperation at the Ministry of Education and Science in Ukraine. We discuss her background in law, challenges to education during the war, and more. Let's have a listen. Albina, thank you today for joining me. I'm excited to have you on the podcast, and you have such an interesting career and background. So if we can, get started with the first question. What's your interest in law and kind of where does that come from? And then how does that background in law connect back to education and your work in the ministry?
Hi, Ryan. Thank you for having me today. It's indeed very exciting for me also. Thank you for this question. It's very, very interesting and deep question, should I say, because this leaves me to go deep in my roots and understand and reflect how my journey gets me to where I am now. So to start, my interest in law is something that has been since my childhood, and it rooted in a deep-seated sense of justice and fairness. From a young age, I was very aware of rules, somehow structure, organization, and I found myself naturally inclined to think about how these things should be fair and just, not for just myself, but for everyone around me. And this sense of justice was something that guided me throughout my school years and made me consider a career in law. So the idea of becoming a lawyer appealed to me not just because it was a prestigious profession, in Ukraine it is, but because it also aligned with my personal values. I was fascinated to know how the law works, how the society works, how the state works, and how this can be used to protect rights of the citizens. So, unlike many of my peers, I had a strong sense of direction and where I want to go and where I want to study and whom I would like to be. So I decided to study at one of the top law universities in Kharkiv. It is Yaroslav the Wise Law Academy. It was that time academy, and it helped me a lot during that time. I gained a deep understanding of the legal system, of the state, of the citizens' rights and responsibilities of the state. And this education provided me the tools to think critically, to analyze complex situations, to solve problems. And these are the same skills that I now use in my role at the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, whether I'm drafting legal documents or negotiating partnerships or projects, or ensure that the policies align with the national or international law. My legal background is now a key asset, and it helps me navigate the complexness of the work in the government.
Yeah, wonderful. It goes all the way back to your childhood. So that's really exciting to see that you can fulfill that kind of dream. Uh, for the next question, I'm really fascinated by this idea of international cooperation, and that's a key part of your career and your role. So what are some partnerships and programs that you've worked with, and kind of how do you approach these partnerships to be successful?
Indeed, international cooperation is not just a part of my job. I should say it's a part of my life already. And it has opened countless opportunities for me to collaborate with a wide range of people, organizations, partners all over the world. And in the ministry, we engage in partnerships with major international organizations, with financial institutions, with governments from various countries, with just individuals. And these partnerships are increasingly diverse. They encompass everything from educational programs, digital initiatives, infrastructure projects, humanitarian aid, everything. So I cannot just focus on specific partnership or project and even on the partner, because I'm sure that if I will miss someone. So I will not just stop on anyone, but to go further, that In my experience, a key to any successful partnership is effective communication. And it's essential to understand the needs and expectations of all the parties involved. This is both listening and truly hearing what we are communicating about. And this ensures that everyone stays on the same page and any challenges that arise can be addressed quickly and effectively. Another important aspect is building trust and mutual respect. This partnership thrives when all sides feel valued and respected. So my approach is to create an environment where transparency is the norm and cooperation is the foundation for everything we do. By fostering a culture of openness and collaboration, we can align all stakeholders because we have diverse and one project can involve a lot of sides. So we align them toward a common goal and make sure that our partnerships are productive and successful.
I can echo all of those things in terms of international partnerships and cooperation. One of the things that you're facing right now is sort of, a conflict here in Ukraine, and we're sitting here talking on Zoom, and so telling us, the outside world, what are these challenges? Can you talk about them in terms of the role of education, and how have you supported these efforts to kind of overcome the challenges in your various roles?
Yes, but now we're not talking about the conflict in Ukraine. I should say it's a much more bigger
Sure.
problem. It's a big war, and it is in Ukraine, but it impacts all over the world, but major part of the world. And it's a full-scale invasion that had a Russian full-scale invasion, Russian war. It has a profound and very far-reaching impact on every sector of our society, and education and science is no exception. The challenges we face now are enormous and they affect millions of people. The war has displaced millions of children, millions of people and their families, forcing many to flee their homes and seek refuge either in Ukraine or abroad. This displacement has caused significant disruption in education, as you may imagine, with many children struggling to continue their studies under extremely difficult circumstances. So in addition to displacement, hundreds of schools of educational institutions have been damaged or completely destroyed. So it's further majoring the problem. These conditions have created significant psychological distress among students as it disrupted their learning and widened their educational gaps. So the situation is incredibly challenging, not only for students, for their families, but also for educators, for policymakers. So we are working to ensure that education can continue in any possible form. In my role in the Ministry of Education and Science, I have been deeply involved in coordinating our response to these challenges. So we work closely with our international partners to match their resources with the most pressing needs on the ground. And this involves communicating with the governments of the countries that are hosting our displaced citizens, thanking them for their support, advocating for support that allows these children to maintain their Ukrainian identity and continue their education. So our efforts have led to successful implementation of a wide range of projects. This will include rebuilding schools, providing shelters, distributing essential learning materials, such as textbooks, devices, and other educational tools. So when someone reads on the newspaper that something is done, it's a big work, diplomacy, it's a big work of the big team, and this is what we are doing, and this is how we are responding and helping to overcome these challenges in my role.
Right. We had an interviewee on a couple years ago who was in Moldova, helping with some of the refugee children, especially those with disabilities, and kind of getting them an education and things like that. So yeah, you're right. It's widespread beyond the borders, certainly. How about with GPE? You've worked with GPE and you've received assistance from GPE. So can you maybe talk about how you've worked with?
Yes, the GPE has been an essential ally in supporting Ukrainians' education system during these challenging times. It started before I started my role in the ministry. So we unlocked the first 25 million from the whole sum that was granted to Ukraine. And this significant achievement, it was made possible through the collaborative efforts of our partners, of our team also, and particularly giants like Google and Microsoft who helped to unlock this part of money. Now we are in the process of coordinating efforts on implementing these projects. These funds are now coordinated by UNICEF and UNESCO, who are working on this phase one, as we call it. These organizations, together with the ministry and the Embassy of Finland, they are implementing a program that is designed to address the urgent educational needs of Ukrainian children. So this includes different components like distributing laptops, tablets, assessing learning gaps. This is developing and distributing educational materials like e-content. Also, psychological support is a part of this project. So it's indeed a very powerful support and one of the biggest projects that we have now in education. We are now working with the team to unlock the remaining part of the budget. So we're working on we already submitted the expression of interest on the phase two. So we are eagerly waiting for the GPE team to check it. And also, we are also, working on the GPE system capacity grant. It's another very valuable option and possibility for the country to get support, because you may know that Ukrainian education sector is suffering a lot, and we need support for capacity because we have a lot of drive and will, but we do not have that much power and resources to implement all of this. This is why we're now searching for opportunities to make this project happen and hoping that it will also get a very powerful impact for our education system.
Yeah, that's the resource gap. I'm sure is a frustrating part of the position. Actually, a couple of things that you mentioned that I just had a question about. Not from our initial list, but something that popped into my head, if you don't mind, in terms of potential brain drain or Ukrainian students leaving, especially maybe when they're younger, but as they get older, actually, are you seeing? Is this kind of a concern of the ministry about a brain drain leaving the country, or how are you kind of thinking about that?
It's not a concern of the ministry. I think it's a concern of the whole country,
Hmm.
because we do understand that we don't only have a brain drain, we have a people drain, we have a
Hmm.
very big migration, and I hope that permanently, but we are losing people. But I think we're all making everything to get them back. And it's a big policy, it's a state policy for getting people back to Ukraine. Specifically in the education sector, we are working a lot with the policies on remaining ties with Ukraine, with Ukrainian culture, with Ukrainian history. This is how we recommend our children that are living abroad, and we are negotiating this with also the host countries for them to keep studying in Ukrainian schools for the small component. We call it Ukrainian component or Ukrainian courses. It's like Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian history, Ukrainian culture, geography, those subjects that are not taught in either Poland, Czech Republic, Moldova, or any other country. It is the core that will keep the identity of children that are remaining abroad. And we all are hoping that the families will get back and we need these people to rebuild Ukraine and to develop our country, and we are sure that our country will be prosperous and will be very, very high-tech country. But these are people who are the core and who will do this.
Yeah, that's
And
some.
education,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah.
and education is the core for those people, yes.
Sure, absolutely. So it sounds like there's some foresight there in that thinking that, hey, they're going to come back one day and they're going to still have that education and sense of cultural identity. So that once the capacity kind of returns, they can sort of be returning at the same time and help rebuild. So that's a hopeful message to hear. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, and by the way, we see that the number of students abroad, I mean those who finish their schools and they pass this test after they graduating from school, we call it NMT. It's like final test to enter the university, and we as the state are doing a lot to make it happen abroad. So children that are staying abroad, they can pass this test and they can apply to the university in Ukraine, either online or get back and apply then. So we still have a lot of children that are keep passing this test from abroad. So we do hope that they are remaining ties with Ukraine.
Yeah, that's great, giving those opportunities or keeping the opportunities open. One of the things that I always love to ask, especially people who have government roles, because I'm a professor and I'm in academia, and so I always like to hear the other side. I'm just curious. You've had a foot in both worlds, in academia and now in the government. So can you kind of talk about, is there something that academics perhaps maybe they misunderstand about policymaking or just working in the government?
Yeah, one thing to start is that when we're talking about academia and policy making in this relation, this is about policy making in higher education, just to be very
Okay.
very specific, because policy making, I don't know, policy making in early childhood and working a professor in the higher education institution, maybe it's somehow not that related, but in case if you work as a professor in the early childhood, maybe it is. But still, I still enjoy teaching in the university whenever I can. I do take some hours, but it is quite complicated given my governmental role. The aspect I love more about the university and academia is working with students, because they're very fresh and they have fresh ideas, clear perspectives. They're very enthusiastic, energizing. So this is what I specifically like in this work. And it's this is a contrast, with something that is in the government, in the civil service, because I don't know how it is in other countries, but mainly the civil servants are working for a long time. They are not so like fresh, and they have very, very, very straight mind, and they're not so like energizing like students are. And I should say that you cannot understand how to be a policymaker, how to work in a government, unless you are working there. So you can, as you say, the professors criticize civil servants or government. You cannot understand what is inside unless you're there. So if you, I always, when I read like comments and Facebook criticizing like something, some decisions or some roles, I always think like stand and go, and we can hire you. We have a lot of vacancies. We have you say brain drain, people drain, and we have a very big need in qualified people. And so if you have so many to tell and you have so many opinion on something, we are very welcome you in our team, helping us how to solve this. Because, but at the same time, criticizing sometimes helps, and it points on some aspects that maybe do not work well, or are not like a right decision or right solution. But still, like it's it's a very, very good question, a very like dilemma, what is right and what is wrong.
Sure. Yeah, no. So that's I like that answer, getting more, academia involved in the government, because then we can sort of understand rather than, the critique of us is that we're in this sort of ivory tower, talking about everything, but we're not actually in the real world. So I think that's a great message to have. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
But when you're talking about some issue, you're talking this from your perspective, like from your institution you're working in. And I don't know whether it's good or not for yourself, because you're seeing the world from your perspective. But when you're a policymaker, you have different like so-called academia representatives from all around like the country that all have their perspective, and the perspectives of different academia from different cities may be very different, and you as a policymaker should make all this in one policy, and so that everyone will say yes, it's the right decision, but it never happens in any country. And when we are discussing some reforms, we have a very our team has is doing a lot of reforms even now, and in the higher education also we're working on extremely new but very needed reforms in this sector. And when we are communicating this with the representatives of other ministries in other countries, they do say we also have a very big size of critique that comes from the professor when we are doing some reforms, because it's like it's very painful for every person to have something changed. It's like our nature. We like when we have all the same all the time, and when something changes, it's like some ring that we need to critique, or I don't know, to overcome or to stop.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think what you said hits the nail on the head of, you can't please everyone. And so especially as the government role, you're going to have kind of a target on you, because whatever happens, the decision, it's going to go back to you and the responsibility. So, as a faculty, we could just write a paper or write a critique. And if it's wrong, it's okay. Well, we just move on. Only our students kind of heard about it. So, all right. Well, this has been fun. We're kind of coming to the end of the interview, though. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, the future of the sector, the education sector in Ukraine, and, how can the international community help support that future? And you kind of have a message for us looking in, from the outside world.
As I previously said, that education is a key, and I strongly believe, and our team strongly believes, that education is the cornerstone for the human capital development, and the human capital is the key for development in general, for development of the country, for development of the democratic society, for development of the world, and it's vital for the future and for any nation. So for Ukraine, the future of our education and science sector is closely tied to our resilience, to our ability to overcome the challenges that we have. And we have the war that impacted the education sector, but still we are working in like overcoming the war challenges. At the same time, we are developing and doing reforms, because we know that we cannot now just stop and do the emergency response only. We understand that we have to move, we have to reform, and we have the chance to grow. And you grow very fast in these challenging times. Indeed, it's very difficult, but we proceed, and it's like our way to move forward. And this is not just rebuilding what has been destroyed. It's about reimagining. It's about improving the system. It's about they're redesigning the system to meet the needs of the future. And we have these expressions: build back better or build you better. So our country is on the post-Soviet space, as I can say, and we have a lot of old buildings, old systems, old rules, something that should be changed. And now we understand that we don't need to move on the same path. We have another solutions, another developments. And so we are doing this now. And international community has a critical role now, because we are not alone, and we are very thankful that Ukraine is now not alone, and that the whole world is helping us, is supporting us in different ways, and continued support is essential. It's like whenever it's through financial assistance or for technical expertise, or just simply stand in solidarity with Ukraine, it's indeed a very powerful help and very powerful tool that should be continued to use. And education is not just about Ukraine, it's a global concern. And the challenges that we are facing in Ukraine is not unique. And some of them are unique. And so we have a unique expertise that we can share with other countries, and we do share it. So we already have a very unique experience in different sectors, and we also share this like through the academic exchange, through the joint projects, joint scientific projects. So this is how we share and how we help to overcome other countries, their problems also. Indeed, we are not in the best position now. But my message for those who are listening us, who are watching us, is like, your support matters. It makes a real difference in the lives of our children, of Ukrainian children, and in the future of Ukraine, of Europe, and of the whole democratic world, because we are now defending not only Ukraine, not only our land, but the democratic values, the right for a sovereign country, the right for children to study, to go to school, the right to not being in a shelter, being 2 years old, like my son is, when the air sirens start. So this is the right for a happy childhood, the right to develop, and this is what we are protecting, what we are fighting for. And so we are urging you not to forget that it is still ongoing, and that your support matters. And together we will overcome. We're sure we will overcome these challenges, and we will build a bright future and a happy life for those who we are fighting for.
All right, Albina, that's a powerful message to end on. Thank you very much for being on the show. This has been fun.
Thank you for inviting.
And this concludes our KIX EMAP podcast. Of course, the opinions expressed on the podcast are solely those of the host and the guest. The KIX EMAP podcast is made possible by KIX, which stands for Knowledge and Innovation Exchange. KIX is an initiative of the Global Partnership for Education. Globally, KIX is administered by the International Development Research Center in Canada. NORAG in Geneva hosts one of the 4 regional KIX hubs. Find us on the NORAG or GPE websites, where you can subscribe to the podcast and newsletter, or learn about our other activities, including KIX research project updates. Additionally, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at KIX EMAP. You can also directly subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, and you'll receive notifications of each new podcast episode. Thanks for listening.